back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. I am not exaggerating when I say that I think every single designer I have spoken to or worked with in the last several months is hiring someone. It seems like everyone that I talk to in the industry is dealing with this. And even at WindowWorks, we just hired 2 new employees and we are still talking about hiring 2 or 3 more, right? And as often as we've talked about this on the show before, I know that hiring is one of the most difficult tasks in running a business. It's so much more than posting a job on Indeed and then just winging it through the interview process. It's an art that requires a strategic approach and one that I'm the first to admit that I'm still working on, right? But my guest today, Jamie Van Cuyk, is a business consultant who helps small businesses hire strategically. She knows how crucial making the right hiring decision is to us as business owners. And today she's joining us to talk about how to make hiring a process that you can have success with, right? From the job description all the way to the onboarding process. Before we get to the conversation with Jamie, I want to take a moment to thank our show sponsor, Revelwoods, who is also sponsoring our Power Talk Friday in High Point event this October 21st, 2022. If you are running a multiple $1,000,000 firm, then I know your day-to-day is different than it was when you were running the firm and growing the firm up to that first multiple millions, right? Right now, you are likely managing a team, you're managing big numbers in your checkbook, and you are feeling the pressure of weighty decisions on the daily. Well, I'm inviting you to join me, the Vincenz, and Eileen Hahn in High Point this October for a one-day event that, along with your peers who are at the same stage in their business as you, we are all going to work together to help you navigate this new phase in your business journey. And then at the end of the day, at our amazing celebration dinner, you will meet John and Aubrey from Revelwoods. You will learn firsthand how you can add this valuable product to your revenue stream. And when you do, you will probably create another $1,000,000 in revenue for yourself, and you'll be in the next bracket when we have Power Talk Friday again, right? Revelwoods is your source for premium hardwood and resilient flooring. Using the Revelwoods Selector tool, you'll be able to find curated suggestions for your project catered to your client's home. When you sign up for a free professional membership, you'll get access to exclusive discounts and referral benefits. Visit revelwoods.com to get started and go to powertalkfriday.com to register. There are only 20 seats available, and as of this recording, in the beginning of July, we are more than one half sold. So don't wait. Go to powertalkfriday.com. All right, let's hear what Jamie has to teach us about this very topical subject of hiring the right way. Hi, Jamie. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Jamie, this is like probably the hottest topic that we could ever be talking about now, hiring. I swear to goodness, every single interior designer I have spoken to in the last 8 months is like crazy trying to hire. I know at WindowWorks, my other business, we just hired 2 more people that are going to be starting as we speak next week, next Monday. We have identified 3 more people that we want to hire in the next, 90 days. And it's crazy. It's absolutely insane right out there now. Are you finding the same thing with your clients, Jamie, that people are needing to hire, but B, struggling with an effective way to do it?
Yes. Yeah, I am seeing that across the board with my clients. There's lots of need to hire out there. I know we're at a time right now where some industries might find things a little bit more difficult right now in terms of generating sales and revenue, but there's a lot of industries, and I feel like the creative interior design industries is one of them where things are still doing great, and a lot of businesses are growing significantly and need additional help on their teams in order to fulfill the client needs. So there's definitely that need to hire out there. But there's also, LuAnn, as you mentioned, that struggle with hiring, mostly because today's hiring market looks very different than the hiring market of a year ago, 2 years ago. So it's a lot of those things as what worked before doesn't necessarily work now. So people are trying to navigate and figure things out kind of like it's for the first time.
Well, it's so funny that you just said that, Jamie, because I was thinking, when you were saying, one of the problems is that the hiring market and the way to do it is so different. And I thought you were going to say, then 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And you're like, then a year ago. So I'm like, oh, is that why it's so hard? So just tell me about what are the differences that you're talking about when you say that it has changed even in as short as 1 year ago?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things out there where workers have become a lot more clear on what they want out of a career and an opportunity, and they're more picky with their job search. Before people would say, hey, I got a job, great, I'm getting in a paycheck. Now people are saying, I want the right job for me, and I'm going to do my due diligence during the process to ensure that it's the right job for me. And couple that with the fact that, especially in some industries, a lot of people are hiring, candidates have a lot of opportunity to really be picky about what positions they apply for, which interviews they accept, and which job offers they ultimately accept. Which also means because of all that, and the candidates are very much in control, candidates, especially good candidates, are going off the market quickly. So a lot of times, but you get a great candidate into your pipeline, and before you even have an opportunity to talk to them, they already have a job offer or two lined up.
Mm-hmm. So, and you are talking exactly what I'm hearing with the high level designers that I work with that are, look, I'm hearing it. If you're doing $500,000 gross sales a year and you're trying to make one hire, but definitely with the firms that I work with that are 3, 5, 6, $7 million firms, and of course, in exciting windows, we work with firms that are all the way to 13 million plus. That's exactly what we're hearing. It's almost as if you're being interviewed more so than you're interviewing them, and they're going off the market quickly. And I guess what I would say to you is in the big picture, I love this. I love that people are becoming clearer, to your point, on what they want in their job, in their career, and the parameters that they want on that balance between home and work and all the things. I mean, as a human, I love that idea. Okay, I do. But as an employer, facing, the pickiness of the candidates out there, and also empathizing with these designers that have shared with me that, you've got people that are with legitimately next to no experience to speak of that are coming out, and where 3 years ago would have earned a $65,000 salary are demanding 100, 110, 120 plus all kinds of crazy benefits. And so I sit here and I think, wow, as a human, I admire this ability to identify what you want and hold out for it, and clearly state to an employer what would make it that I would pick you over the next guy. But as the employers here, and having employed a lot of people in my last 40 years, Jamie, if somebody doesn't have seasoned ability and you're putting, 100K at them, that's a tough learning curve, that, as an employer you swallow. So what do you tell people? Where's the mix in there, the secret sauce in there of what this dilemma is of both sides of this coin?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, LuAnn, there's that side of it when candidates are becoming more picky that it really is a good thing. And even as an employer, It might seem like a struggle now, but it still is a good thing. And the reason
Mm.
for that is you're more likely to get someone who you're going to be able to easily retain. Because
Mm-hmm.
before, employees would come in and then they'd go through that due diligence of, do I really want to work here? And they're looking at things from a critical lens once they're in the company. And then sometimes they leave quickly because they realize it's not a fit. But now they're
Mm.
doing that work up front. As you mentioned, they're interviewing you a lot of times as you're interviewing them to see if there is that connection from both sides. So it really is a good thing, even though it seems like a struggle right now. So just remember that it is a good thing that candidates are being picky because you're more likely to get someone that you can retain for the long run.
Mm.
Now, with candidates demanding more money, one of the things I will say is I feel like entry level candidates right out of college, they don't really understand for the most part entry level salaries. I know when
Yo,
I
I'm telling
graduated
you.
college, yeah, when I graduated college years and years ago, I had a friend of mine who wanted way more than any job was going to be offering her, and she kept turning down and turning down and turning down these opportunities. And finally it dawned on her that's like, oh, if everybody's offering this, I guess that's entry level for this position. And having her having to understand that entry level doesn't mean this is what you're going to be making over your entire career. It's a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes candidates don't understand that. So that's one part of the puzzle when you're hiring fresh new people out of school is they don't understand entry level salaries. They go out and do research, and sometimes that research is what people are making 5 years in, 10 years in, and that's kind of swaying their opinion. But the other thing we have to keep in mind right now is in the majority of the US, cost of living has gone up significantly. That what you could survive on a year ago, you can't necessarily survive on now. That you
Mm-hmm.
can't afford the rents. You can't afford to buy the same food that you were buying a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that is swaying a lot of that demand for people to ask more for more money. Now, is it always a 1-to-1 ratio that what they're asking for is in line with the inflation of the area? Not all the time, but a lot of times that is it. People are looking at it and saying, in order for me to keep my standard of living and staying in the same place, keep buying the same food that I was buying, keep budgeting like I was budgeting before, this is how much I need to make with how everything has increased. So
Mm.
that is one of the things that is going on right now is some of these demands are a little out of line because people don't have all the information that they need to understand career progression, but then at the same time, it's what people need to survive. And I
Mm.
feel like that's really tough for a lot of businesses because all of a sudden if you're looking and saying, "Oh my goodness, this person entry level is coming in and they're demanding a 20% increase." Well, what does that mean for the rest of your staff? If you're going to be a
Well,
fair
that's the other
employer,
thing. Yeah.
typically that means you have to increase salaries across the board,
Right.
and it can be significant.
Yeah, exactly. This is the actual, secondary thrust of that dilemma is okay, maybe you bite the bullet. Jamie, I am telling you, I work one on one with a handful of interior designers, and every single one of them has hired in the last 7 or 8 months, and every single one of them has had to entertain an $8,500, $115,000 ask from an entry level person, and your brain just spins. And then I'm like the one saying, well, okay, so what about the person that's been working for you for 3 years that's making 80? What are we going to do? We're going to bring them to 120 now? Like, what happens? Right? That's how you have anarchy on your team because no one's supposed to talk, but everybody does. Like, you know what I'm saying? Right?
Right. No, exactly. And you have to be, if you're going to be a people-focused business and care about your employees, you have to compensate your current employees at
Mm-hmm.
least as much as you're compensating your new employees, and you have to value them for their tenure. Otherwise, what's going to happen? They're going to go
Mm-hmm.
to the next company that is willing to give them that increase that they're not going to get from you.
Mm-hmm. It's tough. Like, look, I don't think there's an answer to this because every person, every one of the, every business owner listening to this, you ultimately have to decide for yourself what can you afford, because whether somebody is asking for 100 or 75, if you can't afford 100, then just because that's what the going rate is and that's what they're going to get, then you can't cripple your business for that. So at some level, this does come to each one of us as business owners to make a solid evaluation on what's sustainable for us, right? So we know that.
Exactly.
But I have to say too, and we're going to get into, further on this, where to post and how to do the things to get the right candidates. But, when you were talking about the cost of living going up and so forth, it's so funny because I told you, we just hired 2 new people. They're starting next week. But in that interview process, there was one young woman who we interviewed, who I'm going to tell you what was a rock star. Like, first of all, only young, literally just graduating high school, but took a year's worth of college level courses in the same year as her senior year of high school. So, and I'm just like, first of all, the interview gets pushed to me because I do the interview, so that I should say the resume. And I looked at, the person might come, like, why am I interviewing this person? This person is 18 years old, has absolutely no experience. Like, why did this even get to me? And he says to me, just meet her, because he had met her on the telephone. And so within 10 minutes, I understood why he wanted me to meet her. Total rock star, total like confidence, poise, actually has run her own business on the side through the last 2 or 3 years of high school, managing 40 clients for a swim business where she does private swimming lessons for kids. I mean, I'm just like, whoa, okay? Except that what's so funny, Jamie, is at one point, now we put out on the thing, this is a administrative position. We put out there 18 to 23 an hour, right, for this position. She says to me after I'm like, I'm going to give this kid a shot, blah, 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 like this. She said, but, I need to make 25 an hour. Huh, do you really? I said to her, so, it's inside voice, right? And I said, oh. And she says, yeah, because the apartment that I'm renting, I'm moving out of my parents' house, and the apartment I'm renting, they require me to make 25 an hour in order to prove that I can afford the rent. And I'm telling you what, it took everything I had not to say out loud, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. Like, and what I did say out loud was, I totally respect that you have a drive and that you have a goal, but here's the thing. There isn't you have not answered a telephone in your entire life in any business or any industry. You haven't even worked at a Starbucks. Like, your entire experience is great experience. You're actually a very good entrepreneurial experience. I said, but I don't even know if you could do a PowerPoint or an Excel or any, like, it's not just your grit alone. It's just not. And if it is, great. Then let me give you 18 an hour because you're a smart kid, and I'll teach you everything, and I believe that I will be able to teach you everything. But you don't come in here at the top of the pay grade without any tangible experience. And this is what my designers are experiencing on a level, except that we're talking about 125K ask. It's insane right now.
Yes. Yeah. And there are some things in that which I'm like, I completely agree with you, LuAnn. Like, some of the things where, it sounds like it's a you problem, like the candidate. Yeah. I remember having people before that would come to me, it's like, I need a raise because I moved into a different apartment complex. And I'm just like, okay, that's great, but that doesn't impact your performance. And so I trained my team when I was working in corporate. I was like, listen, I am the first stop of many to say yes or no whether you get a raise. I was like, so I trained them. I was like, here's how you actually ask for a raise and how you prove that you're worthy of that raise, and teach them, I don't care what's going on in your personal life. Right. Unless you are literally, you're telling me you cannot afford to live in the cheapest apartment in our city and keep food on your table.
Next step is homeless, right? And it's my fault because I'm so undervaluing paying you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, that is a problem that we need to address, but you deciding to move into a different apartment that costs more is not a me problem as the person who's paying you. So there is that there of like, okay, we need to make sure that we're not giving people more because they decide to live in nicer places, or they decide to get a more expensive car, or they want to go on extreme vacations that cost a lot of money or anything like that.
Or they're getting married next year.
But we do have to make sure that we're being... But we do have to make sure we're being competitive to say, okay, maybe that place that she's moving into is the cheapest place available. And maybe it's that she has no option to stay at her parents' house anymore because some parents say, you're 18, you graduated, you have X amount of time to move out and get your own place. So there could be other factors in there that we don't know about. We're not going to, can't really dig
Mm-hmm.
into. So you just have to make sure you're competitive enough so people can afford to live in that area where they're living, especially if you're requiring people to come into the office, afford to live within a reasonable amount of time for a commute. And as long as you're meeting that, yeah, it's not your responsibility to pay them more because they decide to live someplace more
Yeah.
expensive. You should pay them more based on the value they're giving to the company.
Yeah. Which at that point was Zippo. Has never answered a telephone in her
Yep.
entire life. And I'm going to have my phone ringing 90 times in 5 minutes, and you're going to handle it. Love that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I was say one of the things that I just kind of wanted to address to give everyone just some tips here is one, definitely post your ranges on your job postings
Yes.
because then it puts it out there. This is what we're paying. Yes, you're always going to have people that want a little bit more or think that's a suggestion or don't read it, but
Mm-hmm.
put it out there so that way it's clear of this is our range. The other thing that I suggest is know before you go into any conversations about money what your top is. So for that particular candidate, you had a range, what was it, 18 to 23, and you could have been sitting there in your mind, they have no experience. There's no way I'm going to give them more than 20. You know that before you go into the conversation about money. So that way you don't feel pressured into making a decision that you're going to regret later. That you already decided this is my ceiling for this
Mm.
candidate based on their experience. And then the other thing that I say is that first conversation. So if you're doing multiple interviews with candidates, that first interview, you ask them about their salary requirements. And some candidates don't want to tell you and don't want to say that they don't want to discuss salary that early, which is fine. Never pressure a candidate into disclosing a number if they don't want to disclose a number that early in the conversation. But if that is the case, what I follow up with is saying, our budget for this position is between, like, this is the range.
Mm.
Does that work for you? So that way it's out in the open in that first interview, that first conversation. So that way you don't go through multiple rounds of interviews for them to say, hey, guess what? I want $20,000 more a year than you are able to pay me. And you're like, oh my God, but I love
Right,
this
right, right,
candidate.
right,
What am
right.
I going to
Love
do
that. I
now?
love 3 really good tips. And I have to tell you, I'm clear on um, these things. We do these things. We put the range in the ad. I know my, if like, specifically in that 18 to 23, because I've said it to, and I said it to this young woman. I said, here's the thing. We put in the ad 18 to 23, and I didn't say, and kind of pisses me off that you answered it and you think I'm going to do 25. Like, I left that part out. But I said, I put in this ad 18 to 23. I said, and let me explain to you my thinking on 18 to 23. 23 is you have done a job like this for probably 3 to 5 years. You have demonstrated that you are able to walk into almost any office, and outside of learning my particular systems, you can work in an office. And that would be demonstrated by your resume and the reference checks that I do. 20, in the middle there is you've got some experience. Maybe not exactly in the same thing, but it's transferable enough that I can picture it, and you seem trainable. And 18 is you actually have no experience whatsoever, but I see a spark in you. I see something in you that I can groom and train and teach. And I said, so you're at that first level, sweetie. That's where you're at. You're not at the 25, right? It's like insane. I love, though, getting clear ahead of time, because that's one of my things. We do it with the design, when we talk about our design clients. It's like we explain with clarity ahead of time what the deliverables are, so that we all are going in with clean agreements. Okay, so all right, now moving on, we have a couple of things in the interview process. Are there tips that you can give us for enabling us to, pick out the kind of information that's going to be helpful to us in making the decision if somebody is enticing and we feel like we might want to offer our top number, and trying to get to, there's no guarantees, but something that helps us, like with benchmarks that we can say, oh, with these questions, I get some kind of insights that'll be helpful to me.
Yes. Oh, yes. I would love to dig into this, LuAnn. So the first thing that you have to do is this before you invite anyone to interview. This should be before you post that job posting, is really think about the position. And when the way people think about the positions and typically where they stop is they think about what tasks do I want this person to perform? And what they forget to think about at this stage is, how is this role going to impact my company? How does this role interact with my clients? How does this role interact with my team? What's going to make me happy 6 months down the road to be still giving this person a paycheck? What's going to make me happy a year from now? What's going to make someone successful? And when you start thinking about those questions and you really dig into that, it transforms that position into someone's going to perform these tasks to really that picture of your idea candidate. And that idea candidate is going to look completely different in your company than if we had that exact same position doing those exact same tasks in another company. They're doing the same work, but how they do that work and how they interact with your business and how they interact with you is going to be different from one business to another. Once you know those things that are going to make someone successful in your business, that's what you lean on when you go into that interview process. And it's also, those are the things you should talk about in your job posting, so that way you're speaking directly to the person that you want to hire. It's like one of those things I always like to say, posting a job is a lot like marketing your business. You want to speak directly to your target audience and not to everyone, because they tell you in marketing, if you speak to everyone, you really speak to no one. It's the same with a job posting. If you make a job posting so broad that it speaks to anybody who might want a job under this title, you really speak to no one. And with a market like this, where people are being very picky about what they even apply for, you want to speak directly to the person you want to hire, so they read that job posting and go, yes, this is the job for me. And you have other people that say, nope, not the position for me. I'm not going to apply, and I'm going to move on.
Can I ask you a question about that? So for example, when you said, think about how this person will, show up and what will make it so that they're successful, and how will what will they do that makes them successful in your company? I'm curious to pick that apart. So for example, my cousin Eileen Hahn is a behavior organizational consultant, and she is an expert on leadership and also on hiring. And so she is who I've learned everything I'm going to tell you from her, and also Jessica Harling as well. And so one of the things that we've identified, and I'm wondering if this is what you're talking about or you're talking about something else. One of the things that we've identified is, if we are looking to hire somebody that's going to work closely with me personally, then this person needs to think fast, talk fast, walk fast, all the things. Like, I don't want to know the whole thing. Just get to the point, blah, blah, blah. And you've got to, and what we've learned is, I need a high attention to detail person around me, but typically we feel like a lot of times, like Eileen will say, we're looking for the unicorn, because a lot of high attention to detail people are also what you would call steady and slow, where leave me here, let me get my work done, I will get it done to completion, it will be perfect, but why are you still talking at me? Like I can't think straight, you know what I mean? Whereas we're looking for the person that can handle fast, quick pace, but also get the details. So is that the type of thing when you're talking about what will make you happy to give this person a paycheck in 6 months, like that kind of personality? Or were you talking about more job description type things, Jamie?
So that could be exactly part of it. What it takes to interact with you, and what's going to keep you happy, and what's going to make you go, oh my gosh, I can't stand to work with this person for another day. So those things are important, and those are things that you would have to figure out exactly what language we want to use, but those are things we can start putting in a job posting when we kind of describe who that idea candidate is. Most of our job postings, we use sentences that specifically say, or the idea candidate is,
right,
this job is for you if, and right, we we describe things there. And those are part of the things that you can say. You are high attention to detail, but very efficient and fast moving
Mm.
in your work and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, to really describe who that is. Because when you were saying that, it's one of those things where I'm just like, oh my gosh, the person you want, that's me. I am very detail oriented. I can tell you all the details, but
Yes.
I'm going to move
Yes.
and move on to the next thing. Like when I do personality assessments, efficiency, I'm as far as you can get on the efficiency scale. And it's like, do not waste my time going into more things that you need
See,
to,
you're
because
my
we need
kind
to
of
be on
girl.
to the next thing already. So let's get it done and let's go
It's
on
funny.
now.
But I've
Yep.
also learned that if
So
I'm hiring for another position, like so a data entry position at WindowWorks, or if I'm hiring for like at LuAnn Nigara Inc., a podcast production assistant, that person isn't interacting with me first line. I'm having communication and interaction with all my employees, but I'm not tasking them directly. There are process and systems set up that they can come in every day and execute on. And my conversation with them is, hey, how's life? What's going on? How was your weekend? And it's our weekly or our monthly reviews and check-ins. So they can be over there working as slow and steady and accurate as they possibly can all day. But if you're right here next to me, it's bang 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 bang, because neither one of us are going to be happy, right?
yeah, yeah. And that is important to know because, as you mentioned, one position in your company needs to operate in a certain way, but another position in your
Right.
company doesn't need to operate that way. And probably if you're thinking of like your podcast manager, you're most likely hiring that out for someone to do because either one, you don't know how to do it, it's not your skill set, and
Right.
you don't care to take the time to learn, or you just don't want to do it because you're better focused on something else. So a lot of times you need a
Mm-hmm.
different skill set there than you, but that person that's interacting with you constantly, sometimes you need a balance, and sometimes you need that
Mm-hmm.
person
Mm-hmm.
that you're
Yes.
going to
And
connect
so,
with,
and I kind of using
connect with
myself
really,
as an
really well.
example, so that if you're listening, put yourself in the conversation that I'm talking about here. Who right next to you do you thrive with?
Yeah.
But maybe your procurement person, right? Your procurement person or your project manager. These are different skill sets, because I can tell you that in the beginning years of my career, I used to, when I would hire for the office administrator, the showroom coordinator position, I would be looking for someone upbeat and outgoing and all the things. And like I was hiring a girlfriend I was going to hang out with. Right? It's like, and it took me years to go, oh, see, Lou, we're not interviewing a girlfriend. We're not finding the person you're going to hang out with. We're
Yes.
identifying that you as a salesperson have a high driving personality, and that's what you're looking for when you want somebody to knock on doors and sell drapes. But when you want somebody to sit back here and place all the orders and check all the bills, you want the person who can zone in and really isn't interested in all the chit chat that's happening around them, right? So we have to do that. We have to, what like I kind of going down this road, because you said, picture 6 months from now. What is this person doing? What does it look like that you are like, yes, I am so thrilled to give you your paycheck, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the term like outgoing. When I'm working with my clients, if they mention something like that, I ask
Mm-hmm.
follow-up questions. It's like, well, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean to you? What is outgoing?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it matter for this role? And sometimes when we ask those follow-up questions, it's okay, how you describe outgoing is completely different how someone else describes outgoing. It matters to this position because they're constantly working with your clients and you want to make sure that client feels comfortable in every conversation. And this role over here, okay, they're out in the community networking, so they need to be outgoing because they need to be that person to make those connections out in the community. All right, this other person, well, you just want them to be outgoing because you want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to get along with everyone in the office. Well, do they really need to be outgoing for that? Or like you said, we're not
Right,
hiring best
right.
friends, we're hiring employees. So
Yeah,
what's going to
I
make you
love it.
happy with them in the office? But I did want to give one other example of really like what it could mean to be work for your company versus doing those tasks anywhere. Is you made comments, the phone's going to ring 90 times in 5 minutes at your company. So if you just put
Mm.
answering the phones, does that
Mm-hmm.
mean it rings 5 times a day? or one of those specific things, if it really rings constantly throughout the entire day, that's a different way to just, you can
Mm,
describe that same task differently so someone really
right.
understands what they're getting into. For me, if I'm just like, okay, I'm doing a receptionist type position, the phone rings occasionally, I answer it, I direct it, but that's not the whole job. I'm okay with that. If I literally had to be there answering the phone constantly, you're on the phone, it's ringing again, you're putting people on hold,
Mm,
that would
hmm.
stress me out to no end. And I'd be
Right.
like, nope, not the position for me. So it's that same task, answering the phones, but it's different in
So
your
clear.
company
That's
than it is in
such a
another
good way
company.
to describe it is, really to get down to that. And I spending time here on this because what I've learned from experts like yourself on hiring, namely Eileen and Jessica, is the just like in our design projects, the more clarity we have up front and the more we can convey that in the job posting and the job description and in the interview, the better match we're going to ultimately end up with, right, Jamie?
Yes, exactly. And when you're really clear on that job posting, a lot of the times you'll get fewer
Mm.
candidates,
Right.
but you'll get
Right, right,
better
right, right. And
candidates.
it's funny because I know one of the mistakes that we made way back in the early days before Eileen was like, hello, is our job posting would be the generic about Window Works. Hey, local family owned company in Livingston, New Jersey, providing custom window treatments and awnings to a loyal community is looking for a new team member. Do you want to be a part of the Window Works team? We're hiring salespeople and installers. It's like, what? Now I just think how ridiculous this posting was, right? Like literally absurd, right? It's like it has to be to everything we just said. I'm basically just showing you how mistakes are easy to make because you think you're advertising, your company. And you said it like we're marketing, but the thing, I know what you meant, and I just clarifying it, right? It's we're marketing the position. Maybe we want to put a little bit of credibility about our company and how many years we're in business, whatever that comes in. But the meat of the thing is attracting. So if I'm looking for an installer, I'm looking for meticulous, loves to see the completed project. You take satisfaction in seeing something to completion. Are you confident on a ladder? Do you like independent work? Blah blah blah. If I want a data entry person, like it's like completely different, even though it's all window works, right, Jamie?
Exactly. That job posting should
Right.
be about the position. It should be about what that person is going to do once they're an employee of your company. You do want
Mm-hmm.
to tell them a little bit about your organization because
Mm-hmm.
they want to make sure that that's a match too, but you don't want to talk so much about your organization that it's like, okay, that's great, but what am I going to do? Because if
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
know what they're
And
going to do,
I
they're
mean,
not going to
I'm
apply.
laughing at myself because we did this for 20 years this way, like literally.
And that's what happens. Most companies out there, they think
I know.
hiring's not that hard. How hard can it be? And they make mistake after mistake after mistake just because you're learning as you go and you're like, "Ooh, that didn't quite work. Let me tweak it." And you keep tweaking things until you get a good hiring process. But it's like with anything, we can get
Mm-hmm.
ahead of that and help you do it right the first time versus having to learn and tweak
I
things as you
100%.
go so you get better.
It's just like everything else. You want a well-designed room, hire an interior designer. You want a good job posting, a good interview process, a good employee, hire an expert to do it, or spend the time to really read and understand how to do it properly because it isn't just shoot from the hip. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs think it is. It's just shoot from the hip and blah blah blah. So once you you get a candidate, how about like any particular tips on the onboarding process on that first day, that first week, to ensure some success or best practices there, Jamie, that you or do you not take your consulting to that point? Is it like we get you hired and you're on your own and go get a different coach for that?
We take it through the onboarding process because onboarding is an essential part of the hiring process. If you slack during your onboarding
Mm,
process, you might as well have hired the wrong person, because onboarding really dictates how
mm,
long that person is going to stay with your company. Companies that have good onboarding processes retain their employees for longer than companies that don't. So onboarding, we see it as part of the hiring process, and we want to make sure that our clients continue on through a good onboarding. Onboarding, one of the things I'll definitely say is it's more than a day. It's not just coming in and
Who
saying,
does that?
here's our
Nobody does
company,
that,
here's what
Jamie.
you're going to do, go do it. And it's also, onboarding is one of those things, even though it will take time, it doesn't need to be like, if you're hiring a full-time employee, you don't need to figure out, what am I going to do with this person? How am I going to train them for 40 hours that first week? Onboarding should be a mix of training and letting them do a few things on their own, and training and then letting them do a few more things on their own. So we set up our onboarding in a process that says, what do they need to know so they can do X? Okay, let's train them on that so they can do X. Then we train them on what do they need to know so they can do Y. And Y might be the next phase of X. So you start very simple and then they move on, or Y could be something completely different depending on what the role is, until you get to the point where they're fully trained in everything they need to know for their job. One of the other things I think is really important about onboarding is needed. A thorough onboarding program is needed, no matter if you're hiring someone who's entry level or someone who's
Mm,
highly skilled
mm,
and experienced in their role. That person that's highly skilled and experienced, you probably don't need to teach them how to do the technical parts of their job. They should know that. They should know how to use the tools. They should know how to put together a good quality design. But you still need to teach them,
mhm.
what are your expectations? How do they navigate your systems? Who are your clients? Teach them about current projects that they might be helping with, and all those things that help them understand your expectations. And that is like the main thing about onboarding. It's teaching them your expectations, how to use your systems, how to use your tools, how to navigate everything so that way you're happy with their performance. Because if you don't teach them your expectations, they're going to make up their own expectations. And it's probably going to be based on, what did they do at that last job, at that last company? And I can almost guarantee you that those expectations are not going to match yours. So then you're going to be disappointed. And it's like, oh my gosh, I hired this person who's then not doing the job I want them to do. I'm not happy. But they think they're doing things well because they set the
Mm.
expectation because you didn't do it for
Listen,
them.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I get it. But what I know in real life, and this is, you know what, it's so funny because no, I say all the time, I can't stand a yeah but girl. Yeah but, and here I just went, yeah but, okay? I know in real life that usually by the time you hire somebody, it's because you're so half underwater that it's sort of like, okay, like you said, one day. I can't tell you the number of times I've had all great intentions based on Eileen and Jessica prodding me, and now you, Jamie, will be in my head. Thank you so much. For I am gonna do. I have these two employees starting now. This I have mapped out the next 3 weeks of, here's my time here with them, here's their time here with that, blah blah blah. But it is a runaway train. It is very difficult to maintain that if it is not. And when you get to a level in your company where maybe there is a trainer. So, we've got companies in Exciting Windows that their companies are large enough that there is an actual training process that goes on for whether it's 2 weeks or 6 weeks, depending on the different company, but it's not handled by the department that needed the hire, that's underwater, right? So give me and my fellow listeners here, my buddies, some actual boots on the ground strategies for like that mix of training and doing. What are some of the things you've worked with interior design firms, Jamie? You told me that before. So when somebody comes in, let's take your basic garden variety junior to senior level designer. Let's not talk about somebody that we expect to be a complete rock star, right? But what does that look like? Is Monday, this Tuesday is that? Like, what's the rhythm look like?
Yeah, so that first day they come in is probably one of the days that you're going to give them the most time,
Hmm.
only because they don't know anything yet. They don't know how to access your systems. They don't know really anything about your clients. They know what they know, but they don't know anything about doing it inside your organization yet. So that's the day that you're probably going to have to spend the most time with them. Does it mean you have to spend the entire day with them? No, but you're going to spend the most time with them. One of the things that we go through with our clients is we ask, what can they do to train themselves and or learn on their own? And sometimes you might say, well, I have nothing set
Mm.
up so they can go do self-serve training, and that's okay. You might not be able to do those technical things yet, but I guarantee you there's stuff that they can go and do and go and look at. So one of the things when I bring in new employees for my business, and this is something I tell everyone if they have something similar, if you have a podcast that goes along with your business, if you've had articles that you've written, if you've had stuff that you've put out there, publications, part of that new employee's assignments that first day or that first week is to go and
Mm.
listen to those podcast episodes. Even if you've guested on other ones, read the publications that you've put out. Read some of the things on your blog so they can really
Mm.
get to know who you are, how you how you present things. They can really start to
Mm.
learn your brand. And so that's one thing that they can start doing on their own. Another thing that they can start doing on their own is after you show them how to access some of your systems, is to go and look around
Mm.
your past projects. What were those designs that you put together? So they can really start to see things, whether it is in physical books that you have in your office, or if you have everything electronically, where they can go and see once again that look and feel and everything and get more absorbed in what you are doing. And yes, they should be able to get some of that from the outside if they're looking at your website during that hiring process and everything, but to really get more into those details of the work that you've put out. Also, teaching them like little things. Okay, well, I know that this person is going to do this task in this system. Well, let me start training them there first so they can go and do that. For one of my clients that I recently worked with that was hiring a junior designer, we said, where do you need the most help now? And
Mm.
those were the tasks they trained on first. So that way they could start doing that. And they're like, well, this isn't the only thing that they're going to do. It's like, yes, but it's something they can do because they have the skill to do it. They just need to learn how to do it in your organization. So start there. Start with reviewing that item. So that way the rest of the week they can focus on
So
those
then the
tasks.
the I'm going to tell you, having hired a gabillion people, I'm going to tell you exactly where you have to be diligent with that, is because I'm speaking from experience. It's you teach them the one thing that you need them, like you said, the most help with now, and you get 2 or 3 days, whatever it takes. By the third or fourth day, they're doing it, and then it's like, see you, bye. I guess you'll figure the rest out. Like, that's great, you're doing that, and then the rest we end up teaching on the fly, and 3 weeks later going, wait, you don't know how to do that? Like, oh yeah, because I stopped the training process on the one thing that was answering the 5 alarm fire in my business, right? And so now I'm learning that.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons we go and we create onboarding plans. This is an onboarding plan that we have our clients present to the new hire on their first day. And one of the things we preference with it is saying, okay, this is set out by the number of weeks we think it's going to take to get through everything. And we are very conservative with these plans, saying you, as the person that's training them, most likely does not have 40 hours to sit with them, 40 hours to check their work and everything. So, what can you realistically think you can cover in a week? And what are the assignments and projects they can work on when you're not with them? So, we outline tell the new hire, this is a fluid plan. So just because it says week 2, we might not be able to get to it in week 2 because something else might come up. But here's everything that we need to go through. We then set goals that go along with this plan. So in the first 30 days, if they train on XYZ, they should be able to do XYZ by the end of 30 days. They should then be able to do XYZ on the end of 60 days. And we set everything out there. And we also, once again, when I coach the business owners through this, it's you are responsible for this plan just as much as your employee is. You have it outlined. If you don't get to it, you're going to look at that and say, okay, that moves to week 3. What do you need to prioritize? It's one of those things of what you prioritize gets done. You need this help with this work. Let's prioritize it. What can we bring in? You have that 5 alarm fire that's going off on this project. How can that new hire help? Even if they can't do anything, what conversations can you bring them into, even if it's them just listening to that conversation with that client, or being there as a shadow when you're going out to that job site when something went wrong and they want to see, you want to teach them how you handle those types of situations, if that's something they'll be helping with in the future. Where can they come along with you where they can learn and
So
see
good. So
things?
good. I mean, lots of great advice there. I have to tell you, it would not, and this is timely for me, as I said, with next week, I would have resisted all efforts to have them do things, to your point, like you said, if I have a written onboarding plan, in that includes activities and things that they can do if I'm not in front of them, or Kim's not in front of them, or JC's not in front of them, right? Things that they can do on their own, or like reading the blogs on our website or different. I never would have tasked with that, because I would have been like, oh my God, they're going to be so bored and they're going to want to run away. like I just wouldn't have thought that that is now I'm sure you're not saying, well, it's not an 8-hour day, Lou, right? But I would have felt like I'm copping out as the person who hired this person if I'm like, look, for the next hour and a half, Kim's on a sales appointment, this one's here, I got a meeting, here's what you can work on that's independent. I wouldn't have thought to do that. I would have thought that was a cop out.
Right. And one of the benefits of that, you sit there and say it might be boring to them. But if you've talked to anyone who just started a new job, and not in your company, because they're probably not going to tell you this, they might, but they probably won't. But if you talk to a friend that started a new job at the end of their first week, what is one thing they tell you? It's typically,
Hmm.
it's like a fire hose of
Hmm.
information. I'm trying to sort through it all. And that's something you have to remember, is there's
Hmm.
so much coming at them. It's so much information. Everything is new. Once again, even if they know how to do the job, they haven't done it for you yet. So they're learning your systems, they're learning your processes, they're learning how to connect with your personality, they're learning who the team is. They're learning so much just from being there, that it's a lot of information that they're trying to sort through. So giving them tasks that might seem boring when you're an experienced designer coming in is also giving them
Hmm.
that mental break that they need to sometimes be able to absorb that other information. One of the things, like for the example with the podcast, is I tell my employees,
Hmm.
go take a walk and listen to it. You don't have to be sitting at
Hmm.
your desk. Go take a break. Go do something that is for you. A lot of times my employees and everything are working remotely and everything. So I'm like, get up from your desk. You don't have to be sitting here at your desk doing this. Go get a little bit of exercise, and it helps them refresh. It helps them take that moment where they're still learning about your brand and who you are and what's important to you that you share with the world,
Hmm.
but it's
So
different.
good. I mean, you're right. Like, most people would welcome some sort of respite in the middle of a crazy week. you know.
Mhm. It's also the other thing that I tell people is that first week, if you're so stressed out where you're like, I don't know what to do with this person for 40 hours, guess what? You don't need your new employee to work 40 hours that first week. Once
Right.
again, it's a fire hose of information. Reward them and say, hey, I know there's a lot coming at you.
Mm.
Go home a few hours early. Take that time, take that mental space that you need to refresh. And that way you're not stressing out of, oh my gosh, I have so
Mm.
much to do and I
I
can't
get
sit
it.
down with them again today.
Yeah, I love it.
Give them that time back. There's probably other weeks in the future that
Hmm.
they'll be working a lot for you. So recognize that
Love
they're
it.
learning a
Very good
lot
advice.
those
Very
first
and
few
timely for
weeks.
me. I have two other areas, and I know we're coming up on almost an hour here, but I have two other areas that I really don't want to close without addressing. So the one is, we're talking a lot about us as the principal, as the CEO, as the owner of the business, and the best practices for us to attract the right candidates to begin with, some negotiation and some tactics for having a good interview, and then also this onboarding process. But there's the other side of it, and I know that we have a lot of designers listening that aren't necessarily the principals, and they are going into companies and working for companies that haven't set up an onboarding process, that really, I mean, I wouldn't want to look at, I'm going to do my best next week, but my best isn't going to be what you or Eileen or Jessica would do, but I can tell you my best is a heck of a lot better than I did 20 years ago. All right. But 20 years ago, I was already in business 20 years. And so my point is, there are people out there where they're not getting direction from their new employees, my designers listening, that the CEO is not setting up what should you be able to master in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And what is your advice if you're in that situation and you're feeling like there's not enough direction and not enough of setting up the tangibles that you're going after to know that you're doing a good job in your new position?
Yeah. My advice for that would be to have the conversation and ask, can we set goals for the first 30 days? I want to make sure that I am accomplishing what you want me to accomplish. So can we have a quick conversation about your expectations? What are my ongoing goals? Do we have goals for the first 30, 60, 90 days? And really just lead the conversation. And it could be one of those things where you can even be proactive, because a lot of business owners want people that are proactive in the positions. And you can say, based on what I've been exposed to, this is my assumption. Is this correct? Am I missing anything?
Great. I like it. I mean, it's great. It's just like, just take the elephant and put it right in the room. Do it respectfully, do it in all the right ways, but just say, I'd love a little help here, understanding what the hell you want from me. Right?
Right. Yeah. And I would say just definitely stress of like the point of, you want to make sure that you're achieving their expectations and everything. So not sitting there and it's like,
Right.
I don't feel like I have any
Right.
goals. I don't feel like I have
Right.
direction. It's like, how can I help you? How can
Right.
I make
love
sure
it.
that this
Very
is
good.
successful?
And then the other question that I wanted to address, speaking of reading blogs, when I was getting ready to talk with you, Jamie, I saw that you had a podcast that was about how the shorter work week is increasing productivity, or is it advantageous? I'm not sure the word that was used there, but this is a big movement now, the 4-day work week. And I've got one designer that I work with that they do a 4-day work week, but their Monday through Thursday is 8 to 6. So it's 10 hours. I have another designer, Sarah Brennan, who has Flex Fridays, where there's a version of that one Friday a month. You're working, but you can be working, like her, when she explained it to me, Lou, they can be working from a boat as long as they have access to internet and the other rest of the team has access to them, and their deliverables were done by that Thursday, then they can, yes, wake up, check in at 9 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and make sure that they're not impacting somebody else getting work done, but they can work from a boat if they want. So talk to me about this philosophy. Are you on board with it? What are you finding? Because I think this is another thing that we're finding in candidates, right? That they're like, wait, you work 5 days still?
Right. Yes. Yes. I think the episode that you're referring to is why a shorter work
That's
week
it.
is key to increase productivity. And Joe Sanook was on that episode. And the first thing I want to preference is a 4-day work week is not going to work for all industries. And you have to, and it's not going to work for all businesses, even within an industry. So you have to figure out what's going to work for your business with your specific clientele, with the specific vendors that you're working with and everything. So as you mentioned, that one company that that has that Flex Friday, where it's like, okay, you meet your deliverables by Thursday, you can do whatever you want on Friday, just make sure you're available. That might be a good option, because if you're working with vendors and clients and everything that are going to need you on those Fridays because they're helping to complete the projects and everything that are going on, that might be better than saying, we're not available on Friday. Now everything is going to get delayed. So you have to figure out what works best for you. A lot of people are looking for flexibility. They want the ability to be able to live their lives and not feel like they're constantly working. And some of the ways to do that is a shorter work week. And one of the things that Joe says is, you mentioned people working for 10-hour days. they're actually saying the most
Mm,
productivity is for 8-hour
right.
days. It's not adding that additional time on, because once you really get over those 8 hours in a typical workday, your productivity starts to go down and your
Mm,
error rate starts to go up, just
mm,
because you're starting to get mentally exhausted. And sometimes you don't realize it, but this is what happens when
mm.
people work really long work days. And so they found out that when people have less time, they get more done, because they view it as, I have less time, I need to get it done, where they were filling 40 hours before with the same task that now they can complete in 32 hours. So that's one way people are looking at flexibility, because you have certain jobs where you have to be in an office. You have to go to client job sites. You have to do things. So you're kind of location dependent. You can't be working from across the country for 6 months and no one notices and no one cares. You have to be in a certain location. So that's a way to provide some sort of flexibility to say, all right, you need to be in this city because you need to be face to face with clients, but here's an opportunity for you to get a longer weekend, for you to have that extra day of the week to go do you and what you want
Mm,
to do and what's going to make you happy, and get that boost of energy that you need from that downtime in order to really be productive at your role when you're there. That's one thing a lot of people are looking for. A lot of people are also looking at, why do I need to come to the office if my job really
mm,
doesn't require me to be in the office? And you might sit there and say, but they need to be in an office for XYZ. But if it's not a job where they need to be there all the time, bringing in some sort of flexibility to say, okay, you need to be in the office for these tasks, but maybe those tasks can be completed 2 days of the week and you can work 3 days from home. You still need to be able to go meet up in job sites, or go meet with clients face to face at their home or whatever it's needed in order to do the work. But the rest of the time, does it matter if you are at home or you're at the office, if you have access to the same systems, you have access to the same software and project files and everything else. So it's figuring out, how can you build flexibility into your
mm.
business without it
Yeah.
hurting
It's
your
it's a
business.
conundrum, I have to say, because I think that there's first of all, you have to have very clear understanding of what has to be done in a week. If you're not clear as the principal on what your employee needs to accomplish in a week, then how can they know if they've accomplished it in order to have that Friday off, or yada yada, right? That's number 1. But number 2, right, right. And
Right.
so,
That's
but the
exactly
other
it.
part of it that is tough is that now in my LuAnn Nigara Inc., Diana can do whatever the heck she wants. Like, because I just know this person is going to do what has to be done. She's never going to not do something. So if she wants to work from home every day, she wants to work from home 2 days, I don't care. And every day she says to me, when are you coming in? I'll come when you're coming in. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to be here on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or I'm coming every day, or I'm not coming at all this week. Right. And so, but the thing is, when I think about window works, and there is an argument that salespeople will make to us that they can get more work done with less errors if they work from home, because it's uninterrupted, because the phone does ring 20 times in 10 minutes. So that's probably realistic. Like, I would say 20 times in 15 minutes. Let's just say it can be that. Okay. And, I'm sitting here working on a quote, and Mrs. Smith calls and has a question on the quote I delivered to her yesterday. But if I'm sitting at home doing a quote, I don't get Mrs. Smith's phone call, right? I get to finish the quote I'm doing. And it's a good argument. I hear the words on it and it makes sense. But here's the other part of it, is that when my salespeople are in the building and an installer comes in and says, oh, this job didn't finish because of that. Now there's a meaningful conversation that happens where the salesperson might have made a mistake, or the installer misunderstood directions, or the salesperson didn't give good directions, or the installer calls in and says, this job isn't going to go up. Why? Well, because, the salesperson measured it wrong. Well, when the salesperson's right there, like, whoa, 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 I didn't measure it wrong, did I? Let me get on the phone. And it's just interesting how I actually witness how much communication happens when even 4 or 5 people are quote unquote working independently at their desk. And that's a tough thing for me to look at all salespeople and go, yeah, stay home, get all your work done. It's a tough thing. So,
Yeah. It is. And it's one of those things of saying, okay, these conversations still need to happen. So if you're not going to be here in the office, how do we have that same
mm,
communication level when you are not there? Even they said, well, I can finish this quote and not being interrupted by this client. Well, if it's okay not to answer that client's um, call right away when they're working from home and not answer their question right away,
right,
why
right.
is there a different expectation when it's in the office? So I understand maybe the phone might be physically ringing, but is there the option where it says, okay, if you're in the middle of that quote, let it go to voicemail and then call them back? Because if it's okay when they're home, it should be okay when they're in the office. Or if the expectation is, no, a client calls, you need to answer that call if you can, because that's the way how we view customer service is we're going to answer on that first ring and answer their question, then there should be
Mm,
that same expectation when they're working from home. So why
mm,
is that not happening when they're working from home? Is it because someone doesn't know that they're not answering the call? And figuring out what are those expectations and how, if possible, do we mirror those same expectations
mm.
when people aren't physically in the office? And some of it is 100% possible. It's just looking at things a little bit differently. It's using different tools. It's setting up new systems and processes. And other things can't be duplicated when people are working from home. And then it's making that decision of, okay, does it really matter to be done this way? If so, then this needs to happen in the office and people need to be in the office so it can happen this way. If it doesn't really need to be done that way, it's saying, okay, that might have been a process that we followed up until this point, but it's a process we can change in
I
order to
love
give
it.
our employees that
It's
flexibility.
very, I love clarity. So it's like just evaluate it. If it needs to be, if I would expect you to address it when you're sitting here, do I expect you to address it if you're not sitting here? And if I do expect you to address it when you're sitting here, do I need to? Can I change this expectation, right? Like, is it just because the phone's ringing that you have to handle it? I mean, we say that all the time. Honestly, back in all the years when I was selling, I'm like, I'm not in. I'm sitting right because this was before learning and not remote learning, remote work and computers and all the things. I'd be like, I am. These are my eyeballs, but I'm not here. The phone rings. It's not for me. I'm not in the office. Take messages, but that's tough to do in real life. But look, if you're not a high attention to detail person, such as myself, and most of my salespeople are just like me, you need the boundary to say, I need to get detailed work done now without the interruptions. So, very interesting, Jamie. You have given us so much to think about. I want you to take a minute and tell our listeners, tell my friends here about the podcast that you have, the resources that you have, and how, what they need to know if they're interested in working with you.
Yeah, thank you, LuAnn. Yeah, so my podcast is called the Growing Your Team Podcast with Jamie Van Cuyk. It's available on all major podcasting platforms. And with that podcast, we talk specifically about hiring and leading teams within small businesses, helping you really navigate that process so you can feel like a confident leader that can hire right every single time. And a resource that I have for you all today is I have my hiring checklist. It is called the Hiring Checklist, How to Hire the Right Team Member for Your Growing Business. And it brings you through the 8 steps that you need to go through
Mm,
if you want to be successful with the hiring process. Everything from that first step that we talked about is really identifying your idea candidate, who you want to hire, all the way to onboarding that new team member so they can meet your expectations. And you can go and grab that checklist over at
well,
growingyourteam.com/well.
I'm going to be the first one to get it. I'm just going to tell you.
Yes. And then if you're interested in getting support as you navigate the hiring process, you can head over to growingyourteam.com and there's an option where we can jump on a call to discuss your hiring needs and how growing your team can support you to make sure that you hire the
I
right
love it.
person for your open
Jamie, you're a
positions.
rock star. Thank you so much for all of the information that you shared with us today. I do know this is a pain point that we're all experiencing right now, so I appreciate you taking the time to give us all of this advice, and there's a ton of it here for us to take action on. So thank you, Jamie.
Yes. Thank you so much, LuAnn, for having me today.
I have to tell you, when we first started WindowWorks, I had no idea how important or how intricate the hiring process really is. And like I said, we've spent probably 20 years just doing it our way. But it wasn't the right way, right? And it's taken a lot from learning from the experts like my cousin Eileen Hahn and Jessica Harling and now Jamie to completely course correct and then to have turned the corner and to begin to hire in this very strategic way, right? So I'm there with you in the throes of it. I can tell you that we've done it successfully the right way for several years, and there is a difference, okay? Personally am looking to perfect that onboarding process better. But the hiring process, we have really paid attention to the experts, and there is a definite difference. So I had some big aha moments today talking to Jamie that I want to share with you. First, I want to say that Jamie was talking about how much hiring has changed in the last year. And I said how I saw it firsthand. People are raising their expectations about work, salary, flexibility, everything. All right. And I support that, right? But there is a balance between seeking what you want and asking for reasonable expectations. And it's the line that I'm trying to walk at WindowWorks right now. And it's the line that I know many of you are trying to walk as well as you interview possible candidates, okay? Candidates are coming out of the gate with high expectations and little or no experience to back it up. And it's very difficult as someone who hires, as those of us on the other side of that, to see that and to navigate it, right? But Jamie had some valuable insights on this. Of course, she said that you have to make sure that you are in line competitively with your area, particularly with the cost of living, because you can't cripple your business to make a hire. But if you want to stand out and you want to attract quality people, you have to keep that in mind, all right? And I love that she said knowing the number in mind before you interview, right? It's knowing what you will do and what you won't do, right? And then getting it out in the open in that first interview. So that will help you stay strong and stay true to what's reasonable and what you can actually expect in your business and keep the conversation on the level. And I also want to revisit that Jamie said about the thought that goes into the position before you hire. Right? It's not just figuring out what tasks you want the employee to be able to do. It's the deeper thought about the position and about what's really the superpowers of that position and what will make somebody, what characteristics of somebody would make them successful in that position. And that helps you find the right person, right? You think about, how is this role going to impact my company? What do they need to be able to do a year from now? What would make them successful in this position? What would make me happy to give them a paycheck 6 months from now, right? It's important to dig deep for these answers. You have to think about also who they are interacting with, what they need to bring to the table to complement your existing team, and how you can set them and you up for success, right? Jamie said that she thinks of that old saying, if you try to sell everybody, you sell to nobody. I love that. We always talk about niching here. And she's absolutely right. It applies to hiring as well. If that job description isn't clear, if it speaks to everyone, then you're going to pull everyone in, but it's going to be harder and harder to find the one that's truly the right fit. And then, of course, like I talked about, the onboarding. Right? It was a nice aha for me to realize that you can task a new employee with listening to podcasts or reading blog posts or looking at videos. For you, you might want them to look through old projects to see the different types of kitchens or rooms that you designed, okay, so they can get familiar with your aesthetic, right? They could also spend time in your resource library. And if you're a solo and you've got your first employee and they're going to be helping you with design at all, anything that you have in your resource library, it could be binders of hardware. It could be binders of appliances, anything. All right. And I have to say, I did learn this lesson from Jamie right as I had these new employees starting at WindowWorks. And over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have incorporated this into the process. And it's as Jamie said, that both of our new employees have, I really have visibly noticed them welcome the downtime. right? During the day. Not that either one of them have, done a big sigh of relief when I'm like, okay, sit down and relax and read Window Fashion Vision magazine now, right? But you almost could see that it is a lot to be attentive for 8 hours in a day and to be taking in the fire hose of information. So to be able to sit at your own pace and take in some information was an excellent tip that I learned from Jamie, and I put it to good use, right? So ultimately, so much of hiring, from the job description to the job posting to the interview to the onboarding, comes down to clarity, right? You have to get crystal clear on your expectations, on what you truly want and need out of the candidate, and what they need to bring to the table in order to be successful in your company. And you also have to give them the expectations. You explain them to them so they know what to do in order to meet them. All right. So I say go grab Jamie's hiring checklist that walks you through everything that we talked about today. You can get that at growingyourteam.com/well. All right. We'll put the link in the show notes. And check out the show notes for the other episodes on hiring. We've got quite a few there. And did you know that we actually have many of our 800 episodes categorized for you by topic? Yeah, on my website. If you go to LuAnnNigara.com, then you click on podcast, then you click on collections, you can see we have 23 categories of collections there, from marketing to hiring and team management to financing to all the things, 23 different categories. And when you are facing a particular challenge in your business, you can go to the website, go to the collections, and just pour through the several shows that are most related to that topic. Okay, so you know how we do it here. We try and have a through line on why somebody is on the show. We do, cross over and often learn more, lessons and more tactics and strategies that cross over to other areas. So some of the shows that are in a category, if it's a consultant, it's an expert, then it's probably the whole show devoted to it. If it's one of your designer colleagues and it's categorized, that means the heart of the show dealt with that. And then you might get some other lessons in there though too. All right. So head over to LuAnnNigara.com and check that out. All righty. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it so much. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.